A young girl escaped the home where she was locked away and silenced, only to be hunted as a criminal by the very people meant to protect her. The local sheriff and his allies weren't just turning a blind eye, they were willing to burn down anyone who stood in their way. But a broken cowboy named Judah Hale chose not to stay silent, and with nothing but his conscience and an old rifle, he took on the system itself. And you won't believe the twists this fight for justice takes, or how, in the end, the truth finally wins. The hills outside Santa Fe were dry and cruel, stretching into the horizon like scars that never healed. Dust swept across the land in lazy spirals, tracing the wind's silence. They hadn't seen rain in weeks, and neither had the eyes of Judah Hale, hidden beneath the brim of his sun-faded hat. There was a hardness in his stare, not of anger, but of something deeper, grief that refused to fade. Each morning, he rose at dawn, not out of hope, but out of habit. He brewed black coffee and stared into it like it held answers, though he knew it didn't. He drank it slowly, letting the silence weigh down on him, then walked the perimeter of his land, tightening wires and mending the fences that no one tried to cross. It gave him something to do with hands that used to carry a child and hold a woman who smelled like rosemary and clean sheets. 2 years ago, a drunk driver had crossed the yellow line and shattered everything Judah ever loved. His wife, Mia, and their 7-year-old son, Caleb, never made it home from the grocery store. The man behind the wheel was the mayor's nephew. Charges were filed, lawyers spoke in circles, but in the end, the man walked free. A tragic accident, the papers said. But Judah hadn't walked anywhere since. He stayed behind bars no one else could see. Bars made of memories, regret, and the unforgivable weight of survival. He hadn't spoken to another soul in weeks when he found the girl. It was evening. The sun bled across the sky in shades of rust and amber, and the cows were slow to return to the barn. Judah noticed a noise in the hayloft, barely a rustle, but enough to set off the instinct that never left him. He moved quietly, hand near the old .22 he hadn't touched in months, and climbed the wooden ladder. And there she was, a girl, maybe 14, dirty, thin, crouched behind a stack of hay like a scared animal. Her hoodie was torn at the sleeve, and her shoes didn't match. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Cold, pale blue. Not wild, just tired. Far too tired for someone so young. He didn't speak at first. He didn't have to. The silence was full of warning. She beat him to it, whispering, "Please don't send me back. I didn't steal anything. I just didn't want to be locked in that basement again." The words hit him like gravel in the wind. He didn't ask what basement. He didn't ask her name. He should have told her to leave. That would have been the safe thing. But he knew what the world did to girls who ran, and he could already feel the consequences sharpening like blades in the dark. She said her name was Sky. Her voice trembled like a guitar string pulled too tight. Her story spilled out in broken pieces over the next few hours, sitting on hay bales with a borrowed blanket around her shoulders. She'd run from her home in Albuquerque. Said her stepfather, a retired deputy, had locked her in a basement more times than she could count. Her mother didn't believe her, or didn't want to, and when Sky finally made it to a police station, hoping for help, her stepfather arrived first, with a story of a troubled teen, a runaway with a history of lying, theft, drugs. Sky swore none of it was true, but no one listened. Now her face was on flyers stapled to gas station doors. Wanted, juvenile offender. She wasn't a fugitive. She was a child who ran from fear, and the world chased her like a criminal. Judah stared at her, the outline of her ribs showing through her sweatshirt. He told himself it wasn't his fight, that he couldn't afford to care, that it would bring nothing but trouble. But she reminded him of Caleb. Not in the face, not in the voice, in the silence. The kind that carried things too heavy for a child. So he gave her water, then a blanket, then an old sleeping bag. And when she lay down in the loft with her eyes still open, too afraid to close them, Judah didn't lock the barn. He left the door open. The fire hadn't started yet, but the match had been struck. It all unraveled on the 4th day. Judah had just finished feeding the livestock when a dust cloud crept over the ridge, slow and deliberate. A county truck rolled up, followed by a second one with blacked-out windows. Sheriff Garland stepped out first, his boots crunching on the gravel with the weight of authority he wore like a badge of pride. 2 deputies flanked him, hands on their belts, eyes scanning every inch of Judah's land like it belonged to them. Garland wiped sweat from his brow with a stained handkerchief and squinted toward the porch. "You haven't seen a girl, have you?" he asked casually, though his tone held too much pressure for it to be small talk. "Young, mouthy, might have slipped through the fence line. Folks say she's been stealing gas." Judah stood firm, arms crossed, his face carved from desert rock. "Only coyotes sneak in around here. I don't welcome them either." The sheriff gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. He knew, Judah knew he knew, but without a warrant or cause, all they could do was linger. Garland turned, but as they drove off, one of the trucks peeled away and parked on the hill behind Judah's barn, too far to confront, but close enough to watch. That night, Skye finally spoke fully. Her voice cracked as she told him about the locked basement, about the heavy chain she once dragged just to reach the sink, about the woman who was supposed to protect her but chose silence over truth. Her memories weren't sharp, more like broken glass scattered in her mind, but each piece cut the same. She looked at Judah like someone who'd stopped believing in rescue a long time ago. "I didn't think anyone would ever help me," she whispered. "No one believes girls like me." Something snapped inside him, a slow, rising pressure that had lived dormant for too long. Judah stood up from his chair like a man shaking off rust. He opened the hall closet, reached for the old Winchester that hadn't left its case in years, and checked every shell with calm, steady hands. By morning, he was in town, sitting across from Brenna Farrell, now a district investigator in child protection. Her office smelled like old carpet and bitter coffee. She had once braided his wife's hair before school dances. Now she looked at him with the heavy eyes of someone who knew too many buried stories. "I don't have evidence," Judah said, voice firm, "but I've got a girl who's barely holding together, and they want to drag her back." Brenna leaned back, silent for a long moment. "You realize what this is? That man's protected, judge's friend, sheriff's drinking buddy." "I know," Judah said. That night, his house burned. The fire caught fast. Flames licked the porch rail before Judah even registered the heat in the floorboards. Smoke rolled in like a tide. He grabbed Skye by the wrist, pulled her through the back door, and rushed her into the barn. The old rifle case slammed open beneath his hands, and he didn't hesitate this time. One arm clutched his father's worn Winchester, the other held the file of documents he kept in a rusted metal box. Birth records, Mia's letters, Caleb's last drawing. And when he returned to the porch to see if anything could be saved, he found the note. It was charred around the edges, the handwriting still legible through the soot. "Stay out of what ain't your business, cowboy." But Judah Hale wasn't that man anymore. Not the one who let the world pass by, head down, hands folded. Not the one who let silence win. Brenna acted quickly. Within days, through channels Judah couldn't name, federal eyes turned toward New Mexico. The girl's testimony, her quiet voice recorded on a decade-old tape recorder she'd hidden in a sock, carried more weight than anyone expected. It was enough to draw attention, real attention. U.S. Marshals took the lead. Garland and his circle had played small-town politics too long and gotten sloppy. His deputies cracked under questioning, contradicting each other in taped interviews. The story Skye told, once ignored, began to grow teeth. 2 months later, the courtroom was full. Skye stood small behind the microphone, hands clasped in front of her. Her voice didn't shake. She told them what happened, start to finish, no pauses, no tears. Her stepfather rose from his seat midway through, shouting denials, but the bailiffs were faster. The judge had him removed in cuffs, silence echoing behind him like judgment. Judah sat in the last row, cap clutched between his hands, eyes low. He didn't speak, didn't move. But when the verdict came, guilty on every count, Skye turned toward him. Their eyes met across the room, and for the first time since he'd known her, she smiled. She never left after that. Brenna helped arrange guardianship. The barn was rebuilt, stronger this time. Judah didn't talk much about what came next, but he rebuilt more than walls. He began to fix what was broken inside, piece by piece, without needing to call it healing. He hadn't set out to become anyone's savior, but sometimes, standing up once is enough to become something more than what you were. And if you rise for someone who's been forgotten, maybe that's the truest kind of justice. Sprosit ChatGPT.